Imagine, just for a second, that you are the absolute ruler of the most powerful empire on the planet. You have unlimited wealth, armies at your command, and thousands of years of tradition propping you up. You are, for all intents and purposes, a living god.
It's the ultimate job security, or at least you'd think it would be.
Right, it should be. But then imagine you wake up one morning and decide to take those thousands of years of tradition, the religion, the art, the capital city, the very identity of your culture, and just throw it all in the trash bin.
Just completely upend everything.
Everything. You decide to start from scratch. You decide to rewrite reality itself.
That's a bold move. I mean, that's usually a very dangerous one for a ruler.
Exactly. And that is exactly what one man did over 3,000 years ago.
But here's the kicker, and this is the part that really gets me. After he died, his successors were so horrified by what he did that they didn't just disagree with him.
No.
They tried to delete him from existence.
The damnatio memoriae, it's a Latin term, the condemnation of memory, and they went all in on it. They smashed his statues, they chiseled his name off the walls, and in the official archives, they stopped referring to him as a pharaoh. They just called him the enemy.
Or that criminal. It's one of the most comprehensive attempts at historical censorship you'll ever see in the ancient world. They really wanted to make it as if he had never even been born.
And ironically, because they tried so hard to hide him, he became one of the most fascinating, most debated figures we have ever discovered.
The ultimate backfire.
Today, we are doing a deep dive into the heretic king. We are talking about Akhenaten, and we're going to try and figure out, was he a madman? A visionary? A religious fanatic? Or maybe the world's first true individual.
It's such a complex story, and to really understand Akhenaten, I think you have to understand the world he was born into, because he didn't start out as this radical outsider.
No, not at all.
He started at the very center of the establishment.
So let's set the scene. We are in the 18th dynasty of Egypt. This is the New Kingdom.
This is Egypt's golden age. I mean, if you think of the sheer wealth and power of the pharaohs, the gold, the chariots, the massive temples we all see pictures of, this is the absolute peak.
And his father was a big deal.
A huge deal. Akhenaten's father was Amenhotep III, also known as Amenhotep the Magnificent.
The Magnificent, that's a lot to live up to.
It was. And under Amenhotep III, Egypt was just incredibly stable, prosperous. They had peace treaties with all the foreign powers. Gold was pouring in from the mines in Nubia and the temples to the traditional gods.
Especially Amun-Ra.
Especially Amun-Ra, yeah. They were richer and more powerful than they had ever been in history.
So it sounds like a time of just comfortable autopilot. Everything is working. Everyone is rich. The system is perfect.
Exactly. The machinery of state was a well-oiled machine. And the young prince, who would one day become Akhenaten, he wasn't even supposed to be king, right?
That's right, which is a key detail. He was born Amenhotep IV, but he was a younger son, the spare. His older brother, Crown Prince Thutmose, was the heir apparent. But then Thutmose died unexpectedly. And so suddenly, this younger brother, who we know very little about from his youth, he's sort of a non-entity, is thrust into the line of succession.
So he inherits the most powerful throne on earth. He is crowned Amenhotep IV. Now, usually when a new CEO takes over a wildly successful company, they don't, change the logo and fire the entire board on day one.
Right, you don't mess with success. And Akhenaten didn't either, at least not immediately.
No, the first few years were pretty standard.
For the first, 4 or 5 years of his reign, he acted like a fairly normal pharaoh. He was finishing his father's building projects at the great temple complex of Karnak. He worshipped the traditional pantheon, Amun, Ra-Horakli, Hathor, all the big names.
He was playing the game. He was keeping the seat warm, or so it seemed.
But if you look closely at the archaeology, specifically at Karnak, you can start to see these little cracks forming. There's this pivotal moment, a speech he gives at Karnak in his second year as king.
I love that we actually have the text of this. A speech from 3,300 years ago. It really brings him to life.
And it's not some boring administrative speech about grain yield. It's spicy. What did he say?
Oh, it is surprisingly critical. I mean, he stands up in front of the court and the assembled priesthood, the most powerful religious figures in the country, and he tells them that the traditional gods are ineffective.
Ineffective.
That's the word he uses. He says they have ceased their movements. He claims their temples have fallen into ruin. He's essentially saying, look at these statues in these dark rooms. They don't do anything. They are static. They are just stone.
Wow. That is a pretty heavy accusation to make in front of the very priests whose entire job it is to maintain those statues.
Yeah.
These are people who believe those statues are the literal living vessels of the divine.
It was a direct challenge. He was basically standing there and telling them their entire worldview was a sham. And he contrasts these stopped or static gods with the Aten.
The Aten. Okay, we're going to hear that word a lot. Let's break that down for us. What exactly is the Aten?
So the Aten is the sun disk itself. Now, it's really important to distinguish this from Ra.
Right, the main sun god.
Yeah. Ra was the sun god, but he was anthropomorphic. He had a human body, a falcon's head, and he wore a sun disk on top of that head. He had myths, a family, a whole backstory about a journey he took through the underworld every night.
Okay, so Ra is a character in a story.
Exactly. The Aten is not a character. The Aten is the physical disk of the sun itself, that circle you see in the sky, the light, the heat. To Akhenaten, this was the only divine force that actually moved and existed forever. It was the universal source of all life.
And it didn't need a statue.
It didn't need a statue because you could see it every single day, no matter where you were.
So he's moving from worshiping a carved idol in a dark room to worshiping the actual physical sun in the sky.
Precisely. And in year 5 of his reign, he hits the tipping point. This is where the revolution really, truly begins. He decides that he can no longer be Amenhotep.
Which means Amun is satisfied.
Right. And he clearly does not care if Amun is satisfied anymore. In fact, he's probably trying to make Amun very, very unsatisfied. So he rebrands.
He becomes Akhenaten.
Which translates to something like effective for the Aten, or the living spirit of the Aten. It's a total identity shift. But it wasn't just a name change. This is where the politics gets absolutely brutal. He began to disband the priesthoods of the other gods.
Disband is a polite word for it.
True. He effectively declared war on the established church. He started diverting the income, the taxes, the grain, the livestock, all the wealth that used to go to the temples of Amun, and he funneled it all to the cult of the Aten.
Talk about a hostile takeover. That's economic warfare. The Temple of Amun was basically a state within a state, wasn't it? Like the Vatican or something.
It was massive. They were the biggest landowners in Egypt besides the crown. They had their own fleets of ships, their own armies of workers. They employed thousands and thousands of people. By cutting off their funding, Akhenaten wasn't just making a theological point.
No, he was consolidating absolute power.
Exactly. He was stripping the wealth and influence of the priesthood and taking it all back for the crown, for himself.
But he didn't just stop at changing the economics of the religion. He decided the old capital, Thebes, just wasn't going to cut it anymore. It was tainted. He needed a fresh start.
Thebes was the city of Amun. I mean, everywhere he looked, he saw the old god. The architecture, the festivals, the very layout of the city was dedicated to Amun. So in that same pivotal year 5, he issued a decree to build a brand new capital city from scratch.
And he called it Akhenaten.
The horizon of the Akhenaten.
Right. Today we know the site as Amarna.
Uh-huh.
And the location he chose is just fascinating in itself. It was this desolate patch of desert in Middle Egypt, completely uninhabited.
And he specifically chose it for that reason. He claimed on his boundary markers that it belonged to no other god, no other goddess. It was a blank slate.
I read that there was something specific about the landscape that really caught his eye, something symbolic.
Yes. There's a very distinct dip in the cliffs on the eastern side of the site, a wadi. At sunrise, the sun appears to rise right into that dip.
Oh, wow.
And it forms the exact shape of the Egyptian hieroglyph for horizon, the Akhet, which is a sun disk resting between two mountains. So to Akhenaten, the landscape itself was writing the name of his god. It was divine providence.
That is poetic. The god chose this spot for me.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, poetry doesn't build a city. We're talking about a massive construction project in the middle of nowhere. No water infrastructure, no housing, nothing. How did he build it so fast? I mean, the archaeology tells us people were living there by year 8.
It's insane.
That's 3 years to build a functioning capital city.
It's an incredible feat of logistics and planning, and it required a complete innovation in engineering and construction. Before this, Egyptian monuments were built with these massive blocks of stone that required huge gangs of workers to move.
Right, you see it in the movies.
Akhenaten's engineers introduced something totally new, the talatat.
Talatat. What are those?
They are standardized, small stone blocks. Roughly 27 by 27 by 54 centimeters. They're about the size of a modern cinder block.
So small enough for one person to carry, like on their shoulder.
Exactly. That's the genius of it. You didn't need teams of 20 men hauling a single massive block. One guy could lift a talatat onto his shoulder and just march it to the wall. It was the first prefab, mass-produced construction in history.
Like ancient Lego or something.
Exactly. It allowed them to just throw up temples and palaces and villas at lightning speed. Now, it wasn't about durability. These walls weren't as stable as the old monolithic ones, but it was all about speed. Akhenaten was in a desperate rush to get his vision built before he died.
And what was life like in the city? If I'm a regular Egyptian who's been moved to Akhenaten, does it feel different from living in Thebes?
Oh, completely different. The most striking thing would be the temples. Traditional Egyptian temples were designed to get darker and more mysterious as you went deeper inside, leading to this small, hidden, dark sanctuary where the god statue lived.
Right, very exclusive.
The temples of the Aten were the exact opposite. They had no roofs.
No roofs at all?
None. They were massive, open-air courtyards. Hundreds and hundreds of offering tables laid out in the direct sunlight. The worship wasn't happening in the dark. It was happening under the full blazing sun.
Which sounds lovely in concept, bathing in the divine light, but I imagine in an Egyptian summer, standing in the direct sun for hours of worship might have been a little intense.
It certainly would have been blinding. I mean, you have white limestone floors reflecting the sun, white painted walls, and the sun just beating down. Can you imagine the smell? Thousands of offerings of meat and bread and flowers just baking in that heat all day.
Sensory overload.
A total sensory overload. The entire city was designed to focus you on one thing: the sun and the sky.
And that brings us to the philosophy, the actual theology of this new religion. We often hear Akhenaten described as the world's first monotheist. Is that actually accurate?
That is the big debate among Egyptologists. Was he really saying there is only one god? Or was he just saying that his god was the most important, the supreme one?
What's the academic consensus on that? Where do people land now?
It shifted over time. In the beginning of his reign, you could argue it's a form of henotheism, worshiping one primary god without denying the others exist. But as his reign went on, it looks more and more like hard monotheism, or at least a very intolerant version of it.
Right.
He wasn't just ignoring the other gods anymore. He was actively trying to kill them, to erase their memory.
We have this really famous text, the Great Hymn to the Aten. It was found inscribed in the tomb of a high official named Ai. What does that hymn tell us about his beliefs?
It's a truly beautiful piece of literature. It praises the Aten as the sole creator of all life. It talks about how the sun causes the chick to chirp inside the egg, how it makes the ships sail on the Nile, how it distinguishes the languages and skin colors of foreign peoples.
Well, it's very universal.
Extremely universal. It portrays a god that cares for everyone, Egyptians, Nubians, Syrians, everyone alike, which was a radical idea in itself.
And there's a surprising, almost shocking connection here to the Bible, isn't there?
There is. Many, many scholars have noted the striking similarities between Akhenaten's Great Hymn and Psalm 104 in the Hebrew Bible.
How similar are we talking?
I mean, the structure, the phrasing, the imagery, the lions coming out of their dens at night when the sun sets and the world coming to life again when the sun rises, it is almost parallel in places.
So does that mean the Bible copy Akhenaten? Is there a direct link?
That's probably a stretch. There's no direct smoking gun evidence of a link, and there are centuries separating them. It's more likely that they both share a common literary heritage of religious poetry from the ancient Near East. But it shows that Akhenaten was tapping into this very powerful, very new way of describing the divine. A single creator who actively sustains all life on Earth.
But here is where it gets really tricky, and I think a bit sinister. He sings about this universal God that creates everyone. But who gets to talk to this God?
Only Akhenaten.
Only him. That's it.
That's the catch. In the Great Hymn, he explicitly says, "There is none who knows you except your son, Akhenaten." In the traditional religion, you could pray to your local god, you had household deities for protection, you had the god of your village.
Right, you had a personal connection.
Akhenaten's system completely severed that. The people worshipped Akhenaten and his wife Nefertiti, and then Akhenaten and Nefertiti worshipped the Aten.
So he cut the phone line to the divine. He made himself the only intermediary, the only priest.
Which is incredibly isolating for the average person. Imagine taking away all the small comfort gods, the gods of childbirth, the gods of the harvest, the gods that protected you from snake bites, and replacing them all with a distant, abstract sun disk that you can only access through the king.
It strips all the spiritual agency away from the population.
Absolutely. And he didn't just ignore the other gods, he actively attacked them. This is the intolerance part that really kicks in later in his reign.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yes, around year 9 of his reign, the persecution began in earnest. He sent teams of stonecutters throughout the entire land of Egypt with one mission: chiseled the name of Amun off of everything.
Everything.
Temple walls, obelisks, private statues, even small personal items.
I read that he even went so far as to hack his own father's name off of monuments because Amenhotep contained the word Amun in it.
That's true. It was a systematic, brutal erasure. He even targeted the plural word gods. He wanted to purify the language and the landscape of any reference to a polytheistic past. And we have found evidence in the workers' village at Amarna, things like ordinary pottery and scarabs, where the name of Amun has been crudely scratched out.
Wait, so regular people were scratching it out on their own stuff?
It seems so. And it was likely out of fear. You know, if the king's inspectors are coming through your village, you don't want to be caught with the enemy's name on your jewelry or your water jar.
That paints a picture of a police state, not just a religious awakening. It feels very Orwellian. The thought police are coming.
It was likely both. A deeply felt spiritual revolution enforced by a totalitarian regime. The two aren't mutually exclusive.
Let's shift gears to something you just cannot ignore when you talk about Akhenaten,
Right.
the art.
Yeah.
Because if you have ever seen a picture of him, you do not forget it.
No, you don't. It is genuinely shocking the first time you see it.
Traditional pharaohs are always depicted as these buff, broad-shouldered, perfect specimens. They all look kind of the same. Eternally youthful, athletic, powerful. But Akhenaten, let's try to describe him.
Oh man, where do you even start? He has this long, spindly, almost pear-shaped face, an incredibly elongated skull that stretches way back, slender, fragile-looking neck.
Okay.
But then you go down the body, he has narrow shoulders, almost no chest muscle, a sagging pot belly, very wide, almost feminine hips, and these thick, heavy thighs.
Which is just baffling. And for a long time, people thought this had to be a medical record, right?
Yeah.
Like, he actually looked like that.
Yes, for decades, the medical theories were the dominant explanation. Doctors and historians would look at the statues and say, oh, that looks like Marfan syndrome, which is a genetic disorder that causes elongated limbs and fingers.
I've heard that one.
Or they'd say it's flourished syndrome, which is a hormonal issue that can cause that kind of feminine distribution of fat. There were a bunch of theories. Antley-Bixler syndrome was another.
But we have some new evidence on that front, which changes the game.
We do. In 2010, there was a major study involving the mummy found in tomb KV55, which is, almost certainly Akhenaten. They ran a whole battery of genetic tests and CT scans.
What did they find?
No Marfans, no flourishes, no signs of gynecomastia, which is the development of breast tissue. The genetic evidence suggests he was a fairly normal-looking man. He didn't have a major physical deformity.
So if he didn't look like that, why did he have himself portrayed that way? Why make yourself look ugly or strange by the traditional standards of your culture?
This is the real aha moment. It's not pathology, it's theology.
Okay, unpack that. How is that theology?
Think about the Eden. The Atenism is the sole creator of everything. It is the mother and the father of all creation combined into one being. Akhenaten is the sole representative of the Aten on earth. Therefore, Akhenaten's physical body must embody everything. It must be both male and female.
So the wide hips, the sagging belly, it's not supposed to be fat. It's fertility symbolism.
Like a mother figure.
Exactly. The androgyny is symbolic of the creator God's completeness and fertility. He broke all the rules of art, not because he was deformed, but to convey a profound religious truth. He was creating a new visual language for a new God. He was saying, I am the mother and the father of my people.
It wasn't just him, though. The art of this entire period, the Amarna period, is also famous for something else we almost never see in Egyptian history: feelings.
Yes, intimacy. It's really remarkable. Before this, you would never, ever see a pharaoh kissing his wife or playing with his kids in an official monument. It would have been seen as undignified.
Right. The pharaoh was supposed to be a stoic warrior god, not a dad. Exactly. But in Amarna art, we have these beautiful, tender scenes of Akhenaten lifting his little daughters onto his lap. We see him and Nefertiti sharing a meal. We even see him kissing her. It's raw and human.
It's almost like a reality show, keeping up with the Akhenatens.
In a way, yes. It humanized the royal family, but again, probably for a theological reason. The royal family was the holy family. For the common people, watching them eat or play was in itself an act of worship.
And Nefertiti is a huge part of this story, too. She wasn't just, a beautiful trophy wife standing in the background.
Oh, far from it.
Yeah.
She is depicted almost as his equal, his co-ruler. In some reliefs, she is shown in the smiting the enemy pose, grabbing a foreign enemy by the hair and getting ready to strike them with a mace.
And that's a big deal because
That is a pose reserved exclusively for the king. No queen had ever been shown like that. It suggests she held real pharaonic power.
so they were a power couple in the truest sense of the word.
It's very likely, yeah.
So we have a new city, a new god, a new art style, a total revolution. But the world outside Egypt didn't stop turning just because Akhenaten was having a religious epiphany. And this brings us to the Amarna letters.
These are just incredible. One of the most important finds in all of Egyptology. It's a cache of almost 400 clay tablets found in the ruins of the city.
And what are they?
They are the diplomatic correspondence between the pharaoh's court and the other great powers of the time, Babylon, Assyria, the Mitanni kingdom, and most importantly, his vassal states in Canaan and Syria.
It's essentially the email inbox of the pharaoh.
It is. And for a long time, historians looked at these letters and came to a very simple conclusion. Aha! Akhenaten was a pacifist. He ignored the empire because he was too busy praying to his sun god.
Is that true? Was he a negligent king?
It's a myth that has been largely debunked now, but it comes from a very real, very tragic drama that plays out in the letters. There's a character named Ribahata.
Ribahata. He sounds like a tragic figure already.
He was the ruler of the city of Byblos, a loyal vassal of Egypt, and he wrote over 60 desperate letters to Akhenaten. He was screaming for help. "The enemy is coming! My cities are falling! Send archers! Why don't you answer me? I am like a bird in a trap!" It's heartbreaking to read.
And Akhenaten just ghosted him.
Worse. He eventually wrote back, and in one of the letters, he basically said, "Why do you write to me so much? Stop it. You're annoying."
Ouch. That is unbelievably cold.
It's brutal. And Ribhata was eventually deposed and likely executed. So early historians saw this and said, "See, Akhenaten let the empire crumble."
But you said that's a myth. So what's the other side of the story?
It's more nuanced. If you read all the letters, you see that Akhenaten was paying attention to foreign affairs. He did send troops to other places. He gave orders. We know from other sources he launched a military campaign in Nubia.
So he wasn't a pacifist.
No. The issue wasn't that he was a pacifist, it was that he had different priorities. He seems to have been playing a game of containment rather than expansion. He was willing to let some fringe territories go to protect the core.
And there was a new threat on the horizon. Literally. The Hittites.
Yes. The Hittite Empire, led by their brilliant and aggressive king Suppiluliuma I, was rising in the north. They were a major new power, and they were very clever. Akhenaten seems to have underestimated them, or perhaps he thought he could manage them diplomatically.
So what was the end result?
He didn't lose the whole empire, not by a long shot, but he did lose the important northern border province of Amurru to the Hittites, which was a significant blow.
So not a total disaster, but maybe he took his eye off the ball while he was building his utopia.
I think that's a very fair way to put it. Building a utopia takes a lot of energy and focus.
Let's talk about how it all ends, because for a while, it seemed to be working. In year 12 of his reign, there's this massive celebration in Amarna, right?
The grandeur bar, yes. We have these amazing pictures of it in the tombs of the nobles. It's a huge reception. You see representatives from all over the known world bringing tribute Nubians with gold and exotic animals, Syrians with horses and chariots.
And the whole family is there.
The whole family is depicted. Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and all 6 of their daughters. It looks like the absolute zenith of his reign. The New World Order is a success.
And then almost immediately, the lights start going out.
It's very sudden and very tragic. Shortly after year 12, people start disappearing from the historical record. Several of the daughters die. We know Akhenaten died because we have her burial scene. Then Nefer and Setepenre also disappear. Even Nefertiti vanishes from the record.
Though she may have just changed her name, right?
That's a theory, yes.
Okay.
That she became a co-ruler under a new name. But the deaths of the children are real.
Why this sudden wave of death in the royal family?
There is very strong evidence of a pandemic. A plague seems to have been sweeping through the Middle East at this time. It hit the Hittites hard, it hit the Levant, and it seems to have hit the crowded, newly built city of Amarna.
Can you just imagine the psychological toll of that? You've declared yourself the sole intermediary of the creator God, the source of all life, and then your own children start dying of a plague.
It must have shattered the theology. I mean, if the Aten loves Akhenaten above all others, why is his family dying? Why isn't the sun saving them? It's a crisis of faith.
Akhenaten himself dies in his 17th year on the throne. And this is where things get really, really messy. Who took over?
This is one of the most confusing periods in all of Egyptian history. We have a shadowy figure named Smenkhkare, who rules for maybe a year. We don't know if he was Akhenaten's son or brother. Then we have a female ruler named Nefertiti.
Could that be Nefertiti ruling as pharaoh?
Many Egyptologists think so, or perhaps his eldest daughter, Akhenaten. It's a huge debate. But eventually, after all this chaos, the throne falls to a child, a boy of about 9 years old named Tutankhamun.
The living image of the Akhenaten's son.
Yes, the DNA from KV-55 in Tut's tomb confirmed it. He was Akhenaten's son, and he takes the throne as a little boy.
And of course, we know him better as Tutankhamun.
Because he, or rather his powerful advisors like Ai and Horemheb, changed his name, living image of Amun.
The counter-revolution begins.
And it was swift. The court packed up and left Amarna. The desert city, this grand utopian experiment, was abandoned almost overnight. They moved back to Thebes.
And Tutankhamun issued the restoration stela, which is basically a public apology, isn't it?
That's a perfect way to describe it. It's a piece of political propaganda that says the land was in ruin. The gods had abandoned this land because their temples were neglected and had fallen into ruin. It basically says, we messed up, my dad messed up, and we are fixing it.
Sorry about my dad, everyone. We're going back to normal now.
Exactly. He reopened the temples of Amun. He started pouring money back into the old priesthoods. The entire revolution was undone in a few short years.
But the real erasure, the delete button, happened a bit later, right?
Yeah.
With a general named Horemheb.
Yes. After Tutankhamun and his successor, Ai, died, Horemheb, who was a powerful general and had no blood relation to Akhenaten's family, seized the throne. And he decided that the entire Amarna period was a shameful mistake that needed to be wiped from the historical record completely.
And this brings us back to those little Talatat blocks.
The irony of ironies. Horemheb ordered his men to dismantle Akhenaten's beautiful temples at Thebes and Amarna. He tore them down block by block. But because those blocks were small and uniform, they were the perfect building material. So he used them as filler, as stuffing inside the massive new temple pylons he was building at Karnak.
So he literally hid Akhenaten's legacy inside the walls of Amun, the very god Akhenaten tried to destroy.
And in doing so, he accidentally protected them from the wind and the sand for 3,000 years. If Horemheb had just left them out in the desert, they might have eroded to nothing. Instead, archaeologists in the 20th century were able to carefully dismantle Horemheb's pylons and reconstruct the scenes from Akhenaten's reign like a giant 3D jigsaw puzzle.
That is just incredible. The very attempt to delete him is the only reason we have so much of his art today.
History has a wicked sense of humor.
But officially on the record, he was gone.
Oh, absolutely. In the king lists, the official history that was taught to later generations of scribes, Amenhotep III, is listed as being succeeded directly by Horemheb.
So Akhenaten, Smenkhkare, Nefertiti, Tutankhamun. They were all skipped over, erased.
You were just blank years, as if they never existed.
So Akhenaten was completely forgotten for millennia, until the 19th century when archaeologists started digging at the site of Amarna, and then we found the tomb, KV-55.
The controversial tomb in the Valley of the Kings. It was a mess. It contained a desecrated coffin. The gold face mask had been violently ripped off. The name cartouches had been methodically cut out with a chisel.
That's chilling. It's like they were trying to kill his soul even in the afterlife, to make sure he couldn't be reborn.
But inside that desecrated coffin was a skeleton. And the DNA, as we said, points to it being Tutankhamun's father.
So, most likely Akhenaten, lying there, stripped of his name, his identity, but still physically present. A ghost in the archive.
It's a very haunting image.
Since his rediscovery, he's become this huge pop culture icon. He's been called everything from a proto-Christian to a failed idealist to, an alien.
Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, wrote a whole book, Moses and Monotheism, arguing that Moses was actually an Attis priest who carried Akhenaten's monotheistic ideas out of Egypt after the revolution failed.
Is there any truth to that? Is it plausible?
Modern scholars don't see much direct evidence for it. The timelines don't really align very well. But the idea is seductive, isn't it? This lone monotheist in a polytheistic world, it resonates with the Western Judeo-Christian tradition. We sort of want to see ourselves in him.
So after all of this, what is the final verdict? What is the legacy of this man?
I think it's a tragedy, really. He was a man who tried to force a singular, beautiful, but uncompromising vision on the entire world. He had absolute power, and he used it to try and break a culture that had stood for a millennium and a half. But the moment he died, it just snapped right back.
It shows that you can change the laws, you can build a new capital, you can tear down the statues, but you can't easily change what's in people's hearts and minds. The people went right back to Amu and their household gods the moment they were allowed to.
And yet his strangeness, the very things that made his successors call him the enemy, are what make him immortal today. He refused to be just another generic, perfect pharaoh. He insisted on being himself, for better or for worse.
Before we wrap up, I just want to leave you with one final thought. We rely so much on history books, on official archives, on the written record to tell us what happened in the past. But Akhenaten's story proves how fragile that record actually is.
Indeed. It's a crucial lesson.
If the city of Amarna hadn't been abandoned in such a specific way, preserving those clay letters in the dry sand, if Horemheb hadn't, by sheer accident, used those blocks as filler, Akhenaten would be a ghost. He would be nothing but a missing 17 years in a king list.
We would have no idea he even existed. None of this story would be known.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How much of our history is missing? How many other criminals or enemies were successfully erased? How many versions of the past are just the stories written by the guys who won, the guys who tore down the other guys' walls?
That is a very unsettling question to end on.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll see you next time.